Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a viewer ask me a question the other day, and it was almost a disconcerting question. I actually felt bad that the person asked this, and they were like, I thought about getting into powerlifting, but what I want to know is that with so many fake natties everywhere and everything related to lifting and sports, can I be successful as a powerlifter completely natural and with no drugs? And I think that was a sad question that needed to be asked. And it's not because I'm even against people using gear. It's that someone thinks that a person can't be competitive in strength sports without them. And here's what I would say to that. Yeah, you absolutely can. Now, I'm going to put in a caveat there. Put in a caveat. You will not be successful in multiple weight classes. Okay? And that's the take-home message. People say, wow, well, what do you mean? Well, I'm telling you that someone who competes at a very, very, very serious level successfully, like they make it to worlds in multiple weight classes, that person's on drugs. Because here's what it comes down to. You have to pick your weight classes very carefully based upon your frame size. You have to pick them very carefully based upon your frame size, and you are going to have to absolutely maximize your muscularity. And you're going to have to find that threshold in your body fat. You have to find that threshold in your body fat that allows you to maximize strength while maintaining strength. Right? When you cut down, you have to maintain strength, but still being in the lightest weight class that you can get away with. Because here's what the advantage you have over some guys on drugs. Yes, drugs can give guys better neuromuscular efficiency. And what I've noticed is that there are guys who compete who are lifetime naturals who I've known. I've had friends who are legitimately clean who still get world's invites in the non-tested federations. Now that will probably floor a lot of you. But they're competing non-tested. They have no reason to lie about their natty status. They're competing in federations that allow whatever you want. Now they tend to be in lighter weight classes because drugs let you get bigger. I mean, this shouldn't be too difficult of a thing for people to grasp. Contrary to what some people may or may not realize, anabolic steroids allow you to gain muscle, right? They put muscle on you. Hopefully that's not a shock to anybody. So what you're dealing with is a case of usually your frame will support a limited amount of muscle. And it's not just going to be how wide and thick your frame is. That's a factor. Be how tall you are. So if someone wants to be very successful as a drug-free, completely natural power lifter, and even if they want to go compete against the boys on the gear, well, you need to pick your weight class very, very carefully, my friend. You need to be looking at what's the most muscle that you can put on your frame from where you're at right now versus your height, and start looking at what weight class could I end up in if I get somewhere between, say, 10 to 15% body fat. And you need to find that weight class and work on that. And what I would say to a lot of guys, you probably need to sit in that class. You probably need to largely give up any sort of big bulking and cutting. And you need to maximize body composition in that class, perfect your lifts. But ideally, you're going to have to fill out a pretty heavy amount of body weight. You have to fill out maximum muscle mass. That is the only way you're going to make it without gear. You're going to have to do a lot of extra total volume hypertrophy work. You're going to have to keep your diet on point. Like if you want to be really successful, meaning you want to actually go compete at nationals in America or something, you're going to have to pick your class. And there's only going to be, for your given height and frame size, there's only going to be probably one weight class that you're going to be successful in. And it might be a heavier class than you think it is, because we can argue about body composition all that we want, but if you're going to compete against other guys on gear, you're going to have to stack out and fill out that weight class. And that's the reality of it. And for a lot of you out there, that might mean going up over 200 pounds. That's what it might mean. And it might mean even sitting at 14 or 15% body fat. But the point is, you're going to have to fill out a weight class to where hopefully you're competing against guys your own height, or hopefully who are a hair taller than you. Right? That's what you're shooting for. And what you want to hope for, is that a lot of the guys in your class, particularly if you're going to go compete untested, used too many drugs to get to that weight class. All right, that matters. Now it's tricky. I mean, it's hard because you are dealing with sports to where people are going to use gear and get away with testing if you compete tested. You're dealing with sports to where if you're not competing tested, you're going to have to go toe-to-toe with guys on gear. But if you pick your weight class carefully and you really put a lot of effort into maximizing body composition, stacking on as much solid muscle as you can and gaining it the hard way, gaining it through training, your muscles are going to tend to be a little stronger per ounce than someone who used anabolics to gain a bunch of size, unless they were very conservative, right? So it's going to come down to having one weight class that your frame will let you fill out properly. You're going to have to find that sweet spot. But it can be done. What I would say to a lot of guys is that you're going to have to train smarter, right? You're going to have to really pay attention to your recovery a lot. You're going to have to pay attention to nutrition. You can't do stupid stuff like really super lean cuts. It's a perfect example. Like if you think that you're going to, I'm just going to cut like a bodybuilder does all the way down really ripped. Instead of when you do cut slow gains and cutting here and there, like if you say, okay, I know I'm going to need to get down to this class later, you might need to do it in multiple phases. Slow cuts, retain all your strength, retain your muscle, don't risk injury. Pay attention to every little detail that's going to affect injuries, because that's going to be a big part of it too, staying injury free and sticking it out in the long term. Like I'll be honest with a lot of you guys, if you think you're going to go compete in powerlifting drug free, that you're just going to train really hard for 2 years and walk in and do it, you're not. You're not going to. But if you say you could stick it out for 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, and you keep your training on point, and you go do some meets, I'm not telling you not to compete until then, and you're willing to be consistent with it so that you can eventually get that exact size and strength, that sweet spot for your frame size for a given weight class, and you can find that sweet spot in your weight class, and you can train your body to allow you to retain strength leaner and leaner over time. Like maybe you find that you can't really go under about 16% body fat maybe at a certain point without starting to lose strength. So you sit there for a while. Then maybe a different year you trim down and you get to where you can get to 14% without losing strength. And then recomp a little from there. Then maybe you find you can get down to 11%. You know, and this could be a multi-year process. You're going to have to condition your body to retaining strength and retaining muscle at lower body fats and just work your way down. And you might find that eventually you can get down to like 10% body fat and still retain your strength completely clean. But it's going to be a process for that, because you probably are going to have to bulk at a certain point in there at least once and then cut down. But again, a lot of that's going to come down to that. It's going to come down to learning your body. It's going to come down to you spending a lot of time perfecting these movements, finding the right accessory movements that thicken you up, finding all your perfect leverages, right? Finding your ideal squat and deadlift stance that lets you get 10 more pounds. Finding your perfect groove on your bench press that lets you get 10 more pounds. Because when you can't just use drugs to muscle your way through stuff, really perfecting your leverages starts to become very, very important. Starts to become important. So we kind of get into this debate of how far can you go? Well, I've had friends who went to Worlds. I've got a friend who's gone to Worlds, personal friend who I've trained with, been to meets with before, who made it to Worlds, and untested WPC who never touched a drug. Now, granted, he was genetically gifted, he was in a lighter weight class, and he trained his ass off. He trained his ass off. To the point to where he had to force himself to deload. Other people had to step in and tell him to deload because he would start getting inflammation and everything and wouldn't back down. He's one of those that he wouldn't back down almost to the point to where he would hurt himself. Now that can be a problem. But fortunately for the guy, because he did it drug-free, he didn't hurt himself when he reached certain points in his training to where if he had been on gear, he probably would have torn something. But he didn't. So it's going to take a lot of work ethic. It's going to require you to train very smart and very hard. It's going to require you to find a lot of sweet points as far as leverages, perfect technique for you, perfect spacing, foot spacing, finding your perfect weight class, and it's probably going to take you 8 to 10 years of very serious dedication. But yes, it can be done. It can absolutely be done. It can absolutely be done. You can absolutely compete even in the untested divisions completely clean and be very successful as a power lifter. You can do it. It's hard, and it requires you to be smart. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.